Okay, Year 10. So your developmental task for this week is to look at an interpretation. Now, normally for your Germany exam, you would get 2 interpretations and 3 questions. The first question would be looking at how the 2 interpretations are different. Second question, why are they different? Third question, which interpretation are you most convinced by? But to simplify things today, I'm just going to show you one interpretation and I'm going to ask you how convinced you are by it. So it's actually very similar to the interpretation question you would get for your Normans paper. So you'll find the interpretation as an attachment in the assignment that I set on Teams, but I'll just read it to you now just to get you to have a feel for it. So it's from an interview with anti-Hitler activist Klaus Bonhoeffer. So immediately we know that this is somebody who did not conform to Nazi beliefs and maybe perhaps spoke out about them, even risked their lives speaking out about them. Now, the exam board really have used these types of sources in the past. So this source or ones very similar to it have been used to provide that sort of non-conformist interpretation of the Nazi regime. So it reads like this. Standing in the line for vegetables, I told my neighbour standing next to me that now they start to kill Jews in the concentration camps, and they even make soap out of them. And they said, Frau Bonhoeffer, if you don't stop telling such horror stories, you will end up in a concentration camp too, and none of us can help you. It's not true what you are saying. You shouldn't believe these things. You have heard them from foreign broadcasts, and they tell those things to make enemies for us. So, a few important things from that. From reading it, when she's talking about them killing the Jews in the concentration camps, we know therefore that it must be near the end of the war, during the time of a final solution. And that is also supported by the final line of the interpretation, where the neighbour says that foreign broadcasts are spreading rumours about Nazi concentration camps killing Jews in order to turn the German people against the Jewish population, against the Nazis. So it's an interesting source because it's basically somebody who is voicing her concerns, her fears, her worries that the Jews are now being killed in the concentration camps. And the neighbour is turning around and basically saying, just shush, okay? Don't speak too loudly. If you are overheard by the Gestapo or the secret police, you yourself will go to a concentration camp and you need to be careful. That is what it's saying. That's a message of the interpretation. So when we look at this interpretation and we think about how convinced are we about the German people's reaction to the Nazi regime, well, you've got 2 different reactions here. You've got the author of this interpretation, for Bonhoeffer, saying that she does not like what they're doing to the Jews and actually being brave enough to voice that opinion in a supermarket line. So she is not conforming and she is not happy. And then you've got the other view, which is somebody who does conform to the Nazi regime, telling her she needs to be quiet, otherwise there's going to be serious consequences. She could end up in a concentration camp. So it's those 2 alternative points of view. So you can use some learning from last lesson to link to why some people spoke out about the Nazi regime. You can talk about the Christian beliefs that are anti-persecution, that are about forgiveness and protecting the weak in society, as opposed to the Nazi ideology of survival of the fittest. And you can talk about as well the fear that the other character within this interpretation, the neighbour, the fear that she felt, and how even voicing these ideas in public in a supermarket queue was seen as a form of opposition and therefore was dangerous. You can also talk about, this idea of censorship. We are going to go on to learning about that next week, so I'm aware that you've not learnt about censorship and propaganda yet. You've also not learnt about the police state and the role of a Gestapo. But if you want to do some reading ahead on Seneca or using your KO to help you with that, then you can do. It's actually really interesting. It's probably, for me, the most interesting part of this course. So I hope you get on okay with that. I will provide a model answer to this question this time next week.